Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Blank, President of Lower Makefield Farmland Preservation. Welcome to our July meeting. And joining me are Dennis Stedman, our Vice President and Acting Secretary, and also Dan Bonkowski, our Treasurer. So I'll turn it right over to Dennis as Acting Secretary for approval of the minutes from May. We didn't have a quorum for June, so there just was a minor note, a note made in the on the website, the LMT website, to that effect. And so our minutes did not get approved from May. So Dennis.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. And the directors have to them the minutes from that May 6th meeting. And I trust everyone's had an opportunity to review those. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented, or is there a motion to make a modification?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And I'll second that.
No,
All in favor?
Nope, sorry.
Aye.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
So next item is Dan, Treasurer's Report.
Sure thing. All right. So we had sent a $50, just a couple of expenses. Want to bring to everybody's attention. We sent $50 to Lower Makefield Township. This is we had to offer our tenant farmers, if they wanted to participate in the Township Community Day, which I think is Labor Day weekend. If they wanted to participate, that we would pay their entry fee of $50. Farmland Farms took us up on that opportunity, and so we paid their $50. And then the other piece is, and I just got to get this back now in front of me on a different page. So we had agreed with Farmland Farms that for the work at the Clearview property and Stackhouse property, all of the soil conservation work that was done, we agreed that we would share 50-50 in the cost up to a total cost of $7,500. So the total turned out to be $8,386.88. So, and Farmland Farms has already paid 100%. So we're going to give them 50% of that for our share in the cost. And there's also just an FYI, it came in under budget.
And that was, just to add to that, we might as well discuss it now. That was summarized by Rachel Anuska from Bucks County Conservation District, and she's helping them, Farmland Farms, apply for a tax credit against 50% of the cost. So I think that her leadership and the involvement of Bucks County Conservation District was great. It was immeasurable help to us and to Farmland. So it was a win all around.
Oh, absolutely. I think without her and her guidance and the plans that she put together on what's necessary and appropriate for those properties, it's fantastic.
Now I've
been driven over there during the day. I need to drive over there during the daytime to actually get a good look. So I'm excited to take a walk over there then.
And on that note, Tim Stewart said that on Stackhouse that there was a bit of miscommunication with the bulldozer operator, and that he didn't feather in at the last part at Stackhouse into the a good enough grade, so that he had to sort of do some planning around that. So it'd be interesting to know if it's really needing of further work or not.
Yeah, maybe we check back in with Tim, or I can write back on that email. I had the impression that he thought it was still good, but I don't know. It wasn't clear. I agree. Maybe it wasn't clear enough if that is additional work really necessary, or is it sufficient? You're satisfied
Right.
at the moment.
If you could check back with them, I think that would be good. Stackhouse, soil conservation. Anything else, Dan?
He says, Tim did
Oh.
say it was not a big deal.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but maybe
All
we'll
right.
just double check to see if make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
And no, nothing else.
Okay. Very good. All right. So for the next item, this is the farmland buffer ordinances. So I got a call from Jim Bajewski asking for preliminary input from Farmland Preservation about the buffer. And of course, we all know we deal with buffers, one of our main issues all the time. So he was looking to consolidate and update all the buffer issues, buffer ordinances. And so I'm going to share my screen and make sure I have that open here. Here it is, I think. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the section. As far as I could see, this was the only section that dealt with farmland buffer, type 3 buffer, he called it in the ordinance. So have you had a
just
chance?
let me just to say there,
Yep.
But pick this question number one, right? Because I think all we have is a lot of questions, not necessarily a lot of answers here, right?
Right.
The terminology used in here says farmland preservation buffer, actually, in the other document. So right there is question number one. Is this farmland buffer? Anyone with farmland, any agricultural property or agricultural zoning? Or is this truly preserved farmland buffers?
Okay, I'd like to capture all these questions. I have some of my own. So is this all farmland?
I read it as all farmland, but
Yeah.
it's a live question.
Yeah.
I guess a fundamental question I have before we go into some of the details is in the document, the very opening sentence of the document that he sent around, the full ordinance, section 178.8, says all major subdivisions and land development plans shall contain a landscape plan approved before construction as part of the subdivision land development approval process. It goes on to reference the buffers. So my fundamental question is, it's my understanding as I read this document, this ordinance is really describing to someone who is undertaking a development of land, this is what you need to include in your plan to be approved. So since all the properties for which we're responsible are, we're fully developed in the late, pretty much late 80s and late 80s and early 90s. There is no plan to submit new plans for new developments that I'm aware of associated with any of our property. So are these ordinances, would they apply to property that was developed 30 years ago? Or is this for property that's developed starting when the ordinance is modified? And how, just whether it was modified or not, how does it affect what we do in our buffers on an ongoing basis? Because it's just a kind of it's a fundamental question, because we're not planting in our buffers. We're trying to manage the plants that are there. So how do these ordinances really impact our behavior and our decisions is
I
a
couldn't
fundamental question.
agree more. That's one of my questions. It was, the way I put it was, does this impact existing buffers?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
just to say
yeah.
slightly different, prospective versus, only new developments, right?
Right. Or only new development.
And I would think it must, because, as we'll get to, the commentary around the 10 feet, and if it's on what side of the fence that is on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I couldn't see how it applied to our existing buffers, and maybe there's a property that someone would build new on that it would contact one of our fields, but for the most part, I don't think it would impact us. And then what does it mean? Wholesale, we have to come in, take out all the trees on our side and make it all grass? I don't think so. That wouldn't be the intent. And what about if there's a new neighbor who moves in, who buys the property? Do they have to abide by this?
Yeah.
I don't think so either, but the question has to be asked.
Yeah.
The area that where I think he has a typo, right? He has a mistake, is deep in the document under section D, type 3 buffer, where he's inserted the on the residential side of the property.
Yeah. Let's see. Immediately adjacent on the residential side of the property line.
It's page 10 of 18 in the
Yeah.
original.
Yeah.
Down towards the bottom, the page number is 7, but the document number is 10.
Yeah.
The buffer shall be 25 feet in which a 10-foot wide planted area is required on the residential side of the line. That would shock most residences, right? I mean, many of them, unless.
Well,
And
I think,
how are you going to enforce that well down the road? I thought that was pretty interesting. I get the point, right? Which was try to make it easier for on the other side, but
it's almost
I
too
agree.
good to be true. Well, this came out of the discussion that I had with Jim, I thought, in that I told him that all we deal with is the overgrowth on our side of trees and plantings. I said, we just as soon have just grass or ground cover on our side.
Yeah.
And when I saw this, I thought, wow, that is pretty radical, in that he's saying, okay, the residential side needs to have the plant. I don't think it, Dennis, to your point, I don't think it's a typo. I think it's his intent.
Well, I mean, to my way of thinking, and I haven't looked at property maps in terms of deeds, but if this would imply that a neighbor bordering our property, their deed kind of stops 10 feet before the fence, and the buffer starts on their side. There's 10 feet of buffer on their side of the fence, and then
Right.
only 15 feet of buffer on our side. Where it's been my understanding, I have no documentation, that we put the farmland fence on the property line, and we've always maintained 25 feet buffer on our side, and there's 0 buffer on the residential side. That's been my operating premise. Now, if we're wrong, that would be a huge discovery. But the way
I think you're
completely backwards.
so I'm looking at the red line version of it, because this is then the red line from the original prior existing, right? But Dennis, I think you are exactly correct that what you just described is the intention of the current buffer, but the way this is written was purposely written this way to change it.
Yeah.
So that the
Exactly.
property line exists, the fence is still on the property line, at least I believe it would be. We have 15 feet on our side, 10 feet on their side, the residential side of the property line of the fence. And I think that just goes into the additional questions, right? So the landscaping plan, then, at least is the way I understand this, is, you know, required to have trees of these certain criteria. But is that to say that homeowner then moves it? Let's assume that this is all a new development concept, because they can't put this in place on an existing development. I think that'd be pretty crazy. But new homeowner, new development goes in, 10-foot landscaped with trees on the residential side of the property line. And so that person buying this property then, is subject to this ordinance of maintaining this 10-foot area. I'm with you 100%. It would be quite a shock, I think, to people when they buy that. And I think it would be pretty difficult to prevent people from, utilizing that full 10-foot area to the fullest extent as any other piece of their property.
This hasn't
swing set on it.
And this hasn't gone, as far as I know, through the township solicitor's review or anything.
Right.
So that may indeed come out at that point. But I mean,
yeah,
I don't
like for anyone that's watching, like, maybe that's just a good point, is that the purpose of what we're doing right now was just that Jim Bajewski asked for some commentary, and none of this was necessarily proposed in any way, shape, or form, but more of to have a conversation.
Right, exactly, and get back to him. And I thought, as a first step, what we ought to do is ask the questions that we started out asking. And I've sort of listed them, and we can go over them at the appropriate time.
The very next paragraph, then D2, says farmland areas shall be separated from residential areas by a 5-foot high chain link fence.
Yeah.
Or approved substitute.
Right.
Now,
that's not what we have.
That's not what we have. It's not 5 feet high. It's not chain link.
Yeah.
Right. So it's 6 feet. Even the wire fence that we use is 6 feet, but 2 feet underground, 4 feet above ground. So I don't know if that's probably not the intent here. It says 5.
The highest fence I've seen is 4 foot high.
Right.
Existing today.
The chain link on Longshore, Dan, maybe that could be 5 feet. That might be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that probably is 5 feet. But that is, to my knowledge, the only property that has that chain link fence.
Yes.
Every other property, I think, has, what we call, and what I think that it's this, what do we call it? This PennDOT Type 2 fencing.
Right. Well, it says or approved substitutes. That's something we would need to clarify.
Well, I think then also that's just the next question there is, so what's the approval process? Who's approving it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, so it seems to me that there's enough kind of fundamental questions that what might pay is to just have an information session with, get a phone conversation, and whether that's between Mike, you and Jim, or 2 of us, or 3 of us, or 4 of us and Jim, I would leave that to you. But I think the best way to give him feedback on this, first draft would be to have a conversation to be sure we're on the same, we're reading it the same way and on the same page, because
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's beyond just a list of questions for him.
Yeah. Would it be helpful to just send him the kind of questions we have in advance?
I mean, you can, but I think we have a more fundamental conversation to be had.
Mm.
The intent of this change, how would that, if this is a change, how would this affect our existing properties? Just,
Right.
there's kind of there's a little more of a dialogue, I think, necessary before we could give him meaningful feedback. That's
All right. I'll set that up. I mean, one of the other fundamental questions that occurred to me is, are there any other LMT ordinance dealing with this? In my mind, I've seen, in the past, I've looked and I thought I saw at least two. And Jim said to me that was one of his objectives in doing this, was to consolidate. But does that mean that the other ones now are, if this one gets approved, this replaces? I don't know the process for that either.
I know, Mike, that Doug Riblet, because I know that type 2 fencing that we used,
Right.
I believe that was from a township ordinance.
Right.
Because I think that's specifically why we salt that out, the same fencing out when we were replacing stuff. So
I remember seeing the wording. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and set up. Jim's back, I believe, next week, and I'll set up a call with him for all of us, for as many as can make it.
okay.
So we'll try to get on that. Maybe we can do a Microsoft Teams meeting, so we can see each other.
Or a phone call, whatever works.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on the ordinance?
I mean, I think it's all stuff that he can go through and give an explanation to us, and maybe it's maybe it's addressed in somewhere else, but I would just have a number of questions on the 10-foot side, on the residential side of the property, like even these planning requirements here. So I guess this is the requirement of the developer, right? They need to put in, if they're going to put in a shade tree at that point in time, it needs to be this certain height, this certain minimum caliper. But, where is the document, or what is going to prevent somebody from putting up and there's the township has a shed ordinance, right, within certain borders. And does this mean that no physical structure can exist inside this 10-foot area? I would just have a whole bunch of questions on that side.
Yeah.
Not so much that it impacts us necessarily at this point in time, but I would certainly be curious as a homeowner that could potentially buy something like that at some point.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent point. Okay. So we'll leave that topic, if that's okay with both of you. Yep. And then go to the next one, which I don't think we can really cover, but I'd like to propose something. So the next topic is process for interviewing prospective farmland board members. And that was to be covered. We sent something to James, our Board of Supervisors liaison, a while ago, and wanted to talk to him about that at a meeting. So what I'm going to propose is that I send, on behalf of the board, a letter to Suzanne Blundy describing, first I'll draft it, let everyone take a look at it before I send it, but my idea would be to describe the situation that we ran into with a new board member not being able to fully participate, and a copy to Ferguson. I'm blocking on his first name, Kurt Ferguson. Yeah, to say this is the situation we've run into, and maybe propose a resolution. I haven't drafted it yet, but how does that sound?
Yeah, I think it just to note that we've had good success with board members when they've had the opportunity to have a discussion with another member prior to joining.
Right, yep, if we had a chance to talk to them, right. We had a chance to talk.
Mike, that makes sense, and I agree with the substance of the topic. But in sending the letter to Suzanne, it would seem you want to discuss that with James first to be
Sure.
sure he's on board. We don't want to look like we're going around the liaison or
Yeah,
so. I would only send such a letter if agreed to by James, and if maybe he gets a chance to review it or put his
yeah,
on it. I think that would probably be wise.
and he may offer a different solution.
Yeah.
So that's a good point, yep. But talk to James first. Just writing something here. Okay. All right. So now we turn to one of our neighbors on Makefield Brook, 1636 Brentwood, had observation about a tree on our side. And I'll turn it over to Dennis for that discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Mike, am I able to share my screen to
You
show?
sure are. I stopped
Oh.
sharing, so you should have a share screen at the bottom of your
Okay.
window there.
I do. Bear with me as I ready my screen. Okay. Let's see.
You need to have the photo open in some way, whether it's
Yeah, no,
first.
that's I'm just being sure that I'm ready in that regard.
Right.
Okay. So, yes, Donna and Lou at this address, lovely people. I went out there to see the property to address their concern. If you can see this, there's about a 10 or
We can.
inch diameter tree here that broke off at about, I don't know, 12, 15 feet high in a storm. There's a very large tree in the woods laying on the ground here. All of this is about 25, I'm going to guess 25 yards behind their property line. There's no risk to their property or the fence or anything else. It's just, it's something that they don't enjoy seeing. This tree that fell, large tree that fell, there's nothing to be done about that. And I said that Farmland's not in a position to really take down a tree that's not representing any kind of harm to the neighbor. They asked if, with our permission, they would be willing potentially to pay to have this broken tree removed, not removed from the property, but at least cut down and laying on the ground, if that would be all right with Farmland. I said I would bring that question to this board meeting. And I asked Matt Cochran of Cochran Landscaping for a price estimate. I just got that a couple hours ago. He could down that tree, the entire tree, for $200. They had asked if they could get an estimate from their tree service company. I told them that would be welcome. I've not heard if they have received an estimate on that yet, but I just sent them a note an hour and a half ago when I got Matt's. So they haven't had the opportunity to respond. But that's the situation. I think the question for tonight would be if our neighbors there are willing to pay $200 or whatever the chosen number is to have that tree fallen and just laying there on our property. is that all right with the farmland preservation? I know we won't spend the money, but we know Matt and we know Matt's work. Would that be acceptable?
So I got a couple questions. Can you give me the orientation here again? This is taken from the homeowner's property looking into our property then?
Exactly. I'm standing right in the center of their backyard, left to right, at our fence, looking straight away from their house, at the edge of their backyard. And it's a heavily treated area. This area is an open, as you can see, the canopy's gone. It's an open area, and so it's clearly on our tree. It's on our property. It's damaged. They just as soon not look at it and are willing to have it fallen.
And so the plan would be to cut it down, or what their request would be is to have it cut, but have it just off to the side, whatever the case is, just so it's not the eyesore, right?
Yeah, it's gonna lay where it falls. Matt said he would remove that top broken piece. That's gonna fall, and then he'd cut the rest of the vertical, 10, 15 feet of trunk down, and it would just lay there. I mean, and if you walk through that woods, there's obviously dead trees everywhere, like there is in every woods.
Yeah.
They just as soon not be staring at that every day. It's a beautiful backyard. Like I say, very good neighbors. So I thought I'd bring that request to the board.
Just so one, I would say that, I certainly would be fine with it, just with one request. If they do not use Matt Corcoran, who, like you just said, we know his work, we know his level of responsibility for being on our land, insurance, all that kind of stuff. I would just say that I think we should at least request, this should be somebody, a legitimate organization, insurance certificates, stuff like that. This shouldn't be just, a guy that you're paying $50 to that runs onto somebody else's property.
No, that's an excellent point. I think saying it a different way, if they chose to not use Corcoran and use their tree service, we would have to approve that tree service, and that approval would include seeing a certificate of insurance,
right.
And just to vet the fact that they're a quality organization before they go on our land.
Well, with the caveat brought up by Dan, I'm in favor of it. And I'm assuming that the red X is not on the tree, right? It's something that was on the photo.
Yeah, that's on the photo. The trunk is right there.
Okay.
This was what I sent to Matt to tell him that's what we want removed. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the buffer. Go ahead. Yeah. I thought it was wrapped for Christmas or something already. Okay.
Is that all right? With that approval, I'll communicate with our neighbors, and we'll follow that path.
So I'll just make a motion here that we are in favor of Matt Corcoran taking down this tree for his quote, and if the neighbors insist that they have someone else do it, since they're paying anyway, but we would ask them for a proof of insurance and to approve the person or organization who will take down the tree.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. That's good work on that one. Oh, and actually, I did get a follow-up from Greg Hucklebridge. I don't know why, but he was interested in finding out what had anything happened and what the status was. And I told him that we were voting on a resolution to the problem that the neighbor had agreed with, and that we were doing that tonight. And he said, thanks, that's all he needed. So they're keeping an eye on things. Okay.
Can I just, because
yeah, Dan.
Rather, if you don't mind, Mike, rather than other business, if I just wanted to throw out something else here, because it's related. So, and Mike, I think you've seen these emails, but the property is at 1449 Heather Ridge. The homeowner had reached out, and this was some time ago at this point. There's a couple things, some trees that are down on our side of the property. But the more pressing is there is a tree that's growing up right against the fence, decent size. I think it's probably 8 to 10 inches diameter, but it's kind of hanging over the fence, our fence, onto their property. Not broken. You probably could consider it an eyesore. It's certainly more of a nuisance tree that was never purposely planted there, I think. And just to give you guys an update, I'm just waiting on actually Matt Corcoran. He was going to get out there to take a look just so we can get an estimate. I didn't make a promise to anybody that we would, 100% take it down. We needed to get an estimate first. And I did, but also I asked Tom McGowan a while back too, if it would be something he would be interested in doing. He said it was not something that he would be interested in taking down, and that we would bill him, or that he would bill us rather. So just wanted to throw that out there so you guys, because I think it's a little old now at this point, but I know that Matt was out of town for a little bit, but I don't know, Dennis, if you got word if he's back in town. Or not sure.
I had asked him for this estimate a couple weeks ago when the first arose, and then this afternoon or this morning I sent Matt a text just reminding him of the address and saying, I really wanted that estimate by tonight if possible. And then he texted me back a few hours later. So
Okay.
a little ping to Matt would help. I know he's very busy.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Just writing it down. I lost you on one thing, Dan, and that was you said something about Tom not being interested, but that he would bill us.
No, I was saying not that I misspoke.
Okay.
I asked Tom if he was interested in doing the work, and that he would bill us.
Oh,
not that he would do it for free, but he would bill us rather than us hiring Matt Corcoran or Corcoran Landscaping or somebody else.
And he said no.
He said he was not interested in doing it.
Oh, okay, good. Got it. Okay. This was related. Okay, we'll turn to Dennis now on honeybee keeping. A good news story.
Yeah. So I've had an update from Sven, our beekeeper and tenant. Hive number 1, I think I told you gentlemen offline, was struggling a bit. As of, where are we here? As of late last week, maybe last weekend, he said Hive 1 was doing better. It's still hanging in there. He's encouraged. He was afraid it was not going to take hold. It's far behind Hive 2. Hive 2 is blowing and going. It's really very, very nice. If I can, let me just share my screen for a second. I'll show you a couple photos if I can find where I am. Hang on. That's not going to work.
And I have to say that I really want to get out there and do it. I'm just waiting for the weather to cool down a little bit before I get into one of those suits.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And Sven has made it very clear, he's happy to take any of us, any board director, or township individual out there. He's proud of it.
Proud of it.
He's it. So here is, this is one of the racks from Hive 2 when I was out there. It's really, the level of activity is absolutely impressive. You can see that.
Wow.
And there's 3 stages that have gone on. Not that all I know is what he told me when I was out there. But you can see their honeycomb. And each one of those honeycombs, the queen comes along, the queen herself, visits every single cell to lay the egg in there. And so that cell is what is where the larva develops. And so that when the larva hatches and comes out to be a worker bee or one of the drones, it's then emptied and then they fill it with honey. So that cell has 2 purposes. It's where the egg is laid and the larva is developed, and then it's eventually filled with honey. So that was rather nice. He can he bought an extra. Whoops, I'm screwing this up. This is Sven. Here are the 2 hives. This is Hive 1 and Hive 2. There's 2 boxes, each on each hive. Each box, I think, is 8 or 12 of those honeycomb racks. And he just told me that this, in the last couple of weeks, he put a 3rd box on Hive 2. It's a smaller box, specifically to capture comb honey. He's now optimistic that he may actually get honey in the first year, which he wasn't counting on this year. And he thinks this Hive 2 will be capable of producing that.
I think the amount of, just to interject here, the amount of investment he's made in this, and the suits and the boxes and everything, is really tremendous.
The time, I mean, he bought the stenciling, the stencil on the honeybee stencil. He gave a lot of thought to marking the site so that it would be unmistakable. If, no one should be back there on that property, but if someone were, they know what it's going to be, right? They're not going to walk wondering, gee, what is this? It's a honeybee hive. So yeah. I give Sven a lot of credit. This is the suit that extra suit that he purchased. It's quite a get up with the hat and the hood, and it's all Velcroed in place. They're not cheap, but he has this extra suit for anybody who wants to come and visit. And I would encourage you to do just that. It's really quite a production. I've not seen anything like it, and he's proud of it as well. He should be. So that's. I also at that day when I was there, and he gave me a tour of the hive. We built a fence, a little gate in his fence, what I call a farm gate. That just has a second post that you can unhook with a wire, and you can lay the about 5 or 6 feet of the fence down to pass through, and then you can hook it back up again, and you'd never know the gate's been or the fence has been violated. So that's in place, and yeah, I'm looking forward to some honey potentially from it.
That's great. Well, great job, Dennis, and it's great to see that that's coming along. I can't wait to get out there myself.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I was fascinated. I really was. Yeah. They're docile. I never felt any kind of. They're very docile, and he has a strain of bees that are known to be docile. You smoke them with the little. You walk out, that's a little smoker. Just.
I'm going right down. And you don't have to keep on smoking them or just, nah,
I smoked it the one time when we took the lid off. Yeah.
Huh. Okay,
It was,
excellent.
we found, I think I told you, we found the queen in Hive 2, and we
Yes.
marked, and that helps him find her a second time, because he really keeps an eye on the queen.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. I haven't asked, as we usually do, if there's any comment from the public. John, if you're there, I'll just at this point ask if there's any comment on this topic or anything we've covered so far.
We've received no public comment.
Okay, thanks. All right, so moving on, the next topic is future meetings. And I wanted to cover that our usual tradition has been to cancel or not to hold an August meeting. I'd like to do that again this year. And then we would pick things up again in September. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think there would be resistance. Okay. Other business. Any other business?
One topic that I know this board was interested in, the Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisors, they formed a ad hoc committee to address some of the historical and other properties that the township owns. That committee, I am one of currently 4 members on that committee. There may well soon be a 5th member. That we had our first meeting, kind of a just get to know you organizational meeting on Tuesday. I think it's a pretty tall charge. It's a pretty tall order to address what are pretty sticky kind of issues and topics. But I think we have a good meeting and good cooperation from Board of Supervisors and from township staff, and so just
Well, that's good.
We'll get that going. And in that meeting, Kurt Ferguson did update all of us on that's applicable to Farmland, which is the Board of Supervisors needs to decide these various public meetings if they're going to continue to support them via Zoom as they have been thus far. And with the governor's emergency declarations or other such terminology altered, there may be a need for some of the meetings to have a physical location for the public to be able to attend. Now that doesn't mean they may not continue to have Zoom and have a hybrid meeting, because I for one think that the Zoom meetings have done nothing but increase public participation in a very positive way, because it's just so much easier to participate and to observe this way. So I hope that we can continue to do it via Zoom. I'm not opposed to doing it in person, obviously, but I like the public participation of Zoom. For Lower Makefield, it's an expense. There's an expense to keep these resources gathered here via this mechanism. So they have to make some decisions as to what groups or what issues or will continue to have this Zoom public capability versus a physical location public capability. They haven't made those decisions, but he was just kind of putting everyone on notice that that's in the queue.
Thank you. Yeah. I think it'd be good if we could meet in person and have it also open to the public via Zoom, for instance.
I agree. I agree.
And something like today, Dennis, right? I don't think you're physically in LMT today, and I'm not physically in LMT today either. And it certainly makes the ability to be at certain meetings that you may not be able to attend otherwise. So
Right. No, I mean, you're in New York, I'm on LBI. I mean, and we can be productive this way. So I hope it continues, but you just be aware that it's not guaranteed. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks for the update. That's helpful. Okay, so review action items. Dan, you're going to follow up with Tim. You may have already done it on the Stackhouse soil conservation, whether anything really more needs to be done or not.
Yep.
I'm going to set up a phone call with Jim Majewski about the buffer ordinances for us to get together with him and ask questions. I'm also going to check with James McCartney first about the idea of sending a letter to Suzanne Blundy about our onboarding process for new members and see what he thinks of that. Dennis, you're going to let us know the outcomes of the tree removal at 1636 Brentwood.
Yeah.
Right. And then Dan, you're going to touch base with Matt Corcoran regarding the tree at 1449 Heather Ridge.
Yep.
Okay. Did I miss anything? Anything to be added? Okay. Good. Well, before my Mac shuts down here, so I'm getting a message that I'm running out of power, we'll call the meeting to close. Yes, Dennis.
Sorry, you want to just check one final time for public comment before?
Oh, yes. Thanks for the reminder. Yes. John, any public comment on anything that was discussed at the meeting tonight?
No public comment.
Okay. If not, we welcome everyone viewing and getting in touch with us if they have any questions about the meeting tonight. So thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Mike.
We'll be talking and see you in some form or other in September.
Yeah. Hey, guys, can you stay in the breakout for a second then when we leave here?
Yeah. I'm going to go get my power
Plug in.
cord.
All right.
I leave
Thanks.
room.
Yeah.